Scuba diving, a mode of underwater diving where divers use breathing equipment that is completely independent of a surface air supply. The word scuba is an acronym for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, and it was coined in 1952. There are many professional applications where scuba diving is essential, but a large portion of divers are simply recreational or exploratory. Regardless of a diver's reasoning, the fact that the activity can be extremely dangerous remains true. There's a reason that special certifications are typically required in order to legally scuba dive. This brings us to the topic of today's video, Ben McDaniel, an avid recreational diver who was reported missing on August 20th, 2010, at Vortex Spring in Florida. McDaniel was regularly diving in Vortex Spring prior to his disappearance. 2 days before he was reported missing, on August 18th, he was seen by 2 employees on a dive entering a cave 58 feet below the water surface. He was never seen again. While it may seem obvious that McDaniel ran into complications in the cave system, the strange thing is, no one has ever found any trace of his body. Prior to Ben's disappearance, he was living at his parents' nearby beach house during a sabbatical in the wake of a recent divorce, some business and financial hardships, and the death of his younger brother, whom he was close with 2 years before. It's believed that he used scuba diving to ease his mind and substitute as an escape from reality, which wasn't always the kindest to him. He was a known regular at the spring and began to seek more challenging dives. Despite not having the required certification, he was covertly exploring the cave system below when opportunities had afforded themselves, a mistake that would supposedly end up costing him his life. On the day of his disappearances, employees and other witnesses noted that they had observed McDaniels looking closely at the area around the cave entrance, as if he was planning something. He would later resurface and fill his tanks at the dive shop one final time, a transaction that was recorded on the security cameras. He then spent a considerable amount of time alongside the spring testing equipment and making notes in his dive log. Employees of Vortex Spring, Chuck Cronin and Eduardo Taran, saw Ben as began descending with his lights on and wearing a helmet, which had suggested he was about to explore the cave. Taran, who had suspected for some time that Ben was forcing the cave's gate open, went down and had unlocked it for him, watching him plunge further inside. It was the last time that he was ever seen. The next morning, McDaniel's truck remained untouched in the parking lot, but the area was slammed with many summer visitors, causing no one to initially notice. On the morning of August 20th, however, the employees became curious where Ben was, which subsequently led to Taran calling the Holmes County Sheriff's Office and reporting him as missing. Immediately after his disappearance, local sheriff's deputies sealed off the spring with crime scene tape. Inside Ben's truck, they found his wallet, with almost $1,100 in cash, his cell phone, and some of his dive logs. His logs showed that he had explored the cave and he had even created a map of what he had discovered within it. It was at this time that everyone assumed he had never resurfaced and had in all probability drowned somewhere in the cave while trying to get out. A large number of experienced volunteer divers fanned out amongst the underwater cave system in an attempt to find and recover Ben's body. However, nothing was ever found. By Sunday, August 22nd, no signs of Ben had turned up. A call for help was sent to Ed Sorensen, a veteran cave diver with over 2,500 logged dives. He came to Vortex Springs the next day. Despite being told that traveling any deeper into the cave was dangerous, he persisted. He made 3 separate dives going 1,700 feet into the cave. This was 200 feet further than any sections Ben had mapped in his logs. Despite his thorough investigation, he found nothing. During the last sections of his dives, He noted that there were no marks indicating that someone had been there prior. "I know what I'm doing and I barely made it through," he noted. "The last place that I searched was pristine, without a mark that a diver had been there. It would be impossible to go through that restriction without making a mark on the floor or ceiling. He's not in there." The McDaniels family grew increasingly worried that their son would never be found. They exhausted their sizable financial resources to aid in the search and recovery efforts of Ben's body. They hired Steve Keane, who had originally mapped the Vortex Spring Cave in 2003 to look for their son. After 7 dives, he apologized to the McDaniels for not finding any fresh sign of Ben. He was quoted as saying, "If he's in there, I don't know where he would be." The family also agreed to put up $54,000 to guarantee the cost of replacing a remotely operated underwater vehicle that would be used by Fort Lauderdale police to search the cave. However, this did not prove successful either. In total, 16 divers spent 36 straight days looking for Ben's body in the cave with 0 results. The volunteer searches continued long afterwards, all to no avail. With the cave searched exhaustively and no sign of Ben McDaniel, some began to question whether he was in there at all. Theories began cropping up about that perhaps someone had secretly removed his body and disposed of it before authorities were contacted. Otherwise, including Cronin, suggested that he had staged his own disappearance to start his life over under another identity and escape his past troubles. The McDaniels family grew increasingly frustrated by the limitations that the search had presented thus far. They firmly believed that Ben's body was in an area of the cave that no one had reached yet. They offered a reward of $10,000 for any diver that they called brave enough to go to these remote pockets of the cave and find their son. The insinuation that previous divers who helped to look for their son were not brave enough to risk their own lives was not well received, and it alienated many of who had been supportive of their efforts up to this point. It was brought up that the reward may incentivize divers to take extreme risks in order to try to claim the reward money. But this criticism was ignored, and the reward was raised twice after that. In March 2012, by which the point the reward was $30,000, those fears were realized when a diver from Mississippi, Larry Higginbottom, died in the cavern while supposedly seeking out Ben's body. The following month, amid intense criticism, the family had rescinded the offer, realizing it only served to endanger those financially motivated to accept the challenge. To this day, no evidence has been discovered relating to Ben McDaniel's disappearance or possible death. Some believe that he got himself pinched in a small cranny of the cave system, and he simply hasn't been found yet. Others believe that he meticulously planned his own disappearance and he's still alive today, living his life under the guise of an alias. We may never know the full truth, as it remains a mystery and incredible 11 years later. What do you think happened? Did Ben McDaniel really drown in that cave the night of his disappearance? Why hasn't anyone been able to find a shred of evidence in the decade that has passed since? Or is it possible that he simply used the scenario of drowning as a convenient explanation for his own disappearance? Let me know what you think in the comments below, and let me know if you have any other mystery topics to cover. I love reading your suggestions. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you back here next week with another video.